Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
And today we are turning our analytical lens onto a real cultural phenomenon, one that completely defined the spiritual landscape of the 1990s.
Yeah, definitely. If you walked into a coffee shop or a dorm room or, an airport terminal between roughly 1993 and 1997, you saw this book.
Oh, everywhere. It had that picture of the Mayan ruins on the cover.
Right. And it was usually being read by someone who looked like they were deeply searching for something. We are talking, of course, about the Celestine Prophecy, an adventure by James Redfield.
Exactly. And before anyone starts lighting incense or getting into the lotus position,
Or before the skeptics out there start rolling their eyes and reaching for the skip button.
right, we need to be very clear about our mission for this deep dive.
Yeah,
This is not a literary review.
definitely not. We're going to critique the prose style. I think even the diehard fans of the book admit the writing is, let's just call it functional.
Functional is generous, but yes. And we definitely aren't here to offer spiritual instruction either. We aren't going to tell you how to open your chakras or see auras.
No. Our goal is to treat this novel as an institutional model of belief formation. We are looking at it as a social technology.
A machine, basically.
Exactly, a complex system designed to organize perception, define identity, and regulate behavior through a very specific meaning-making framework.
Which is such a fascinating way to look at it, because we're asking how a worldview spreads, how it stabilizes, and how it defends itself against criticism.
Right. And the core system we're identifying here is what we're calling a meaning production engine.
Because when you strip away the chase scenes through the Peruvian jungle, what this book actually does is offer a radical reframe for modern anxiety.
It takes that feeling of restlessness, that sense that something is missing or the world is just moving too fast, and it processes it. It tells you that your uncertainty and your psychological need, that's not a disorder.
It's a signal.
Right. It's the first symptom of a hidden spiritual structure, a planetary shift. And crucially, it works by converting ambiguity, just random events and chance encounters, into coincidences.
And those coincidences are the fuel that powers the entire engine.
So we have a pretty clear roadmap for this deep dive. We're going to build this out step by step. We'll start with the system design, then look at the incentive architecture, trace the predictable outcomes, map out the persistence of the system, and finally look at the interconnection with broader societal trends.
Let's start right at the foundation then, system design. And the central narrative device of the whole book is this object simply called the manuscript.
The manuscript, right? So the book is written in the first person. The narrator is sort of drifting through life, feeling that mid-90s malaise when he meets up with an old friend named Charlene.
And Charlene introduces the hook.
Yeah, she tells him about this ancient artifact recently discovered in Peru. It dates back to 600 BC, it's written in Aramaic, and it predicts a massive transformation in human society right at the end of the 20th century.
Notice the design choice there immediately. This is not presented as James Redfield's theory of personality. It's an ancient, mysterious artifact.
Which creates immediate scarcity.
Yeah.
And temporal authority.
Exactly. It bypasses the need for the author to prove his credentials. The credentials are baked into the age of the object itself. It's a discoverable source of truth. But there's another layer to the design that makes it even more potent, which is suppression.
Oh, the suppression is key. Because the moment the narrator lands in Peru to investigate, the stakes are suddenly life and death. The Peruvian government and the Catholic Church, specifically represented by this antagonist, Cardinal Sebastian, they're actively trying to destroy the manuscript.
They're hunting down anyone who has copies of the translations. There are soldiers, gunfights, police searches.
From a systems perspective, this is a brilliant validation mechanism. Because you have to ask, why would the church and the government be so terrified of a few old scrolls?
Because it's the truth.
Right. In the internal logic of the system, the fact that massive institutional authority is trying to crush it proves that it is powerful. It creates this instant us versus them dynamic.
It validates the reader's feeling that they are part of a secret rebellion just by holding the paperback. And this ties into what we call the adventure framing. By wrapping this doctrine in a thriller format, the system totally lowers your critical defenses.
You aren't learning, you're discovering.
Think about the difference there. If I sit you down and hand you a dry textbook on interpersonal energy dynamics, you are going to critique the footnotes. You're going to look for citations.
You're in analytical mode.
Exactly. But if I put you in a jeep, speeding through the jungle, fleeing from corrupt military officials, and a rogue priest hands you a crumpled translation of the Fourth Insight while bullets are flying, you aren't checking citations.
You're consuming the doctrine as a survival tool. You're rooting for the narrator to understand it so he doesn't get caught.
The narrative urgency converts into doctrinal urgency, and that discovery process is heavily gamified.
That is maybe the smartest design element of all. The wisdom isn't just handed over in a single monologue. It's broken down into 9 specific insights.
And in the narrative, you literally cannot find the next insight until you have understood and integrated the previous one. It's a staged sequence.
It's a graduated adoption pathway. Each insight functions like a level in a video game. You have to vibrate at the level of the previous insight to unlock the next one.
Which creates a massive sense of progression and buy-in for the reader. You aren't just absorbing information, you're leveling up your consciousness.
So let's talk about the onboarding mechanism itself. How does the system actually hook a new user? It starts with the first insight, which is all about critical mass and coincidence.
This is the hook that reclassifies uncertainty. Charlene explains that the planetary shift begins when people start noticing meaningful coincidences. You get a hunch, an intuition, and then suddenly you meet someone who has the exact information you needed.
And the text assures you these aren't just random chances, they are destiny. They are signals.
Think about how perfectly that targets the human brain. We are fundamentally pattern-seeking creatures. We look for faces in the clouds. We want chaos to have a narrative.
This first insight validates that biological instinct. It tells you, hey, that time you thought of an old friend and they called you 5 minutes later, that wasn't a statistical probability. That was the machinery of the universe operating on your behalf.
It reframes random chance as personal significance. It takes an unpredictable world and makes it feel magical and deeply personal.
And crucially, it turns you, the reader, into an active scanner. Because once you accept the first insight, you start scanning your own life for coincidences.
And because of confirmation bias, if you scan for them, you will absolutely find them. The system essentially generates its own evidence. It rewards interpretation and discourages falsification.
Because literally everything can be reinterpreted as a confirmation. If something good happens, it's a coincidence leading you forward. If something bad happens, it's a coincidence teaching you a necessary lesson to get to the next step.
Right, it's a perfectly closed loop. So once you are hooked on the magic of noticing patterns, the system moves you to the second insight, which provides a historical reframe. This is introduced by the character Dobson, the historian.
Dobson is fascinating because he introduces this concept of the longer now. This is the system answering the reader's question of, well, where do I fit into all of this?
Dobson basically reframes the last 1,000 years of Western history. He says, look, in the medieval period, we had spiritual security. The institutions told us exactly how the universe worked, and we didn't question it.
But then we had the Renaissance, the Reformation, the scientific revolution. We lost that secure worldview.
So as a culture, we made a collective decision. We decided to focus entirely on secular survival and materialism. We said, let's just make the physical world comfortable while we wait for science to figure out the actual meaning of life.
It's a massive sweeping compression of history. But it creates this incredible narrative arc that leads directly to the person reading the book. Because the punchline of the second insight is that the waiting period is over.
It posits that modern restlessness, all that anxiety and consumerism of the late 20th century, was just a temporary phase that is now ending. We are waking up.
It gives your personal, everyday anxiety a grand historical purpose. You aren't just stressed about your commute or your job. You are experiencing the cultural evolution of humanity.
Which delivers immense explanatory closure. It's incredibly comforting. But to maintain that comfort, the system needs a mechanics layer. It needs to explain the actual physics of how these coincidences happen. And that is the third insight. A matter of energy.
This is a huge shift in the book. The narrator goes to the Vicente Lodge, which is this sort of hidden research center in Peru where rogue scientists are studying the manuscript. And the big reveal is that the universe isn't made of solid matter. It's composed of dynamic energy fields.
And this is where the system shifts its incentive architecture. It relocates verification. It moves away from objective science and places the proof entirely inside subjective experience. In the book, the narrator learns to visually see these energy fields.
Yeah, there's this very specific scene with the philodendrons, these big leafy plants at the lodge. A scientist named Sarah teaches the narrator to look at the plant, but to let his eyes go out of focus, to look loosely.
And when he does, he suddenly sees a halo of white light around the plant.
And it goes further. Sarah then focuses her own attention on the plant. She projects her energy toward it, and the narrator watches the energy field around the plant get bigger and brighter.
Treat this as a perceptual reframe mechanism. It completely expands what counts as evidence. You don't need a peer-reviewed paper to verify this system. You just need to look loosely until you see the aura.
And if you see it, you're in, you're verified.
And if you don't see it, well, you just haven't leveled up your vibration yet. Keep trying. It creates an instant in-group based on a subjective perceptual capability.
But the system doesn't just use this energy concept to look at pretty plants. It applies the energy economy to human behavior. Which brings us to the fourth insight, the struggle for power.
This is the central conflict theory of the entire framework, and it is incredibly sticky. The narrator watches Sarah arguing with a skeptical male scientist, but he isn't just listening to their words. He is watching their energy fields warring with each other.
The text describes it as a literal vacuum effect. When one person wins a point or dominates the conversation, they physically suck the energy out of the other person's field. The winner gets stronger and brighter, and the loser feels drained and depleted.
It's a moral economy of energy. Giving energy versus stealing energy. Think about how universally relatable that is. Everyone has felt drained after dealing with a difficult person.
Right, the concept of an energy vampire.
Exactly. But the book takes that psychological metaphor and reclassifies it as literal physics. It diagnoses all human conflict from a petty argument with your spouse to global warfare as a subconscious competition for a limited supply of human energy.
It turns personal conflict into a recognizable resource management problem. You don't feel bad because you lost an argument or because your ego is bruised. You feel bad because your fuel was stolen.
And if energy is a resource that can be stolen, there must be specific strategies people use to steal it. This leads directly to the governance model of the system, the most famous and arguably most functional part of the book, the control dramas.
This is technically the sixth insight, but it's deeply tied to the energy struggle. We meet Father Sanchez, who explains that because humans feel disconnected from the universal source of energy, they develop manipulative, subconscious strategies to extract it from each other.
These are the control dramas. It's a relationship governance model that reorganizes social interaction and moral judgment. And the book breaks them down into a taxonomy of 4 specific types.
Let's really break these down, because this was the tool set millions of people suddenly started using to diagnose their friends and family in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. So, on the aggressive end of the spectrum, you have the intimidator. This is the person who uses anger, physical presence, or loud threats to force you to pay attention to them.
Because attention is energy. If you are afraid of them, your energy flows to them.
Right. Just below that, you have the interrogator. This is a more psychological strategy. They ask constant questions, they criticize, they look for faults in everything you do.
Right, they undermine you. And the moment you start defending yourself or monitoring your behavior to avoid their criticism, you were giving them your energy. You're funneling your focus into their reality.
Then we swing to the passive side of the spectrum. You have the aloof drama. This is actually the drama the narrator realizes he plays.
The aloof person withdraws. They act mysterious, they give one-word answers, they hide their true feelings.
And by doing that, they force you to chase them. You have to constantly ask, what's wrong? Are you okay? Why are you being so quiet? That pursuit is a massive transfer of energy to the aloof person.
And finally, the most passive, the poor me, the classic victim. They use guilt to demand sympathy. They subtly signal that everything is going wrong for them, and it's up to you to fix it or comfort them. And sympathy in this system is just another form of energy extraction.
But the real genius of the control drama concept is the matching mechanism. The text explains that these dramas are formed in childhood, usually in response to your parents' dramas, and they require a matching drama to function.
So it's a closed ecosystem of dysfunction. An intimidator parent creates a poor me child. Because if someone is yelling at you, you can't be aloof, they'll just get angrier. So you become a victim to try to guilt them into stopping the abuse.
And an aloof parent creates an interrogator child. If the parent is distant and withdrawn, the child learns to pry and question and criticize just to get any energy out of them at all.
It's a completely totalizing explanation for all relationship friction. It gives you a portable diagnosis for every annoying person in your life.
But it also gamifies the solution, because the way to stop the energy theft isn't necessarily traditional boundary setting or deep therapy. The solution is explicitly naming the drama.
There's a scene where a character named Julia gets cornered by a guy acting like an intimidator. And instead of fighting back or cowering, she just looks at him and calmly explains exactly what he is doing. She names the drama.
She bursts the bubble. The system argues that these manipulation strategies only work if they remain covert. The moment you name it out loud, the dynamic collapses. The energy stops flowing.
It's an incredible tool for social regulation. But notice what it also does. It immediately gives the believer the moral high ground.
Oh, instantly. You aren't just having a disagreement anymore. You are the evolved observer diagnosing their lower vibration pathology. Interpersonal friction is completely moralized through this energy narrative.
So if we're supposed to stop stealing energy from each other, where is the energy supposed to come from? Because the system acknowledges we still need it.
That is the fifth insight. The alternative to stealing energy from humans is connecting to the universal source.
This happens when the narrator has a profound mystical experience on a ridgetop in the Andes. He connects with the environment and feels this overwhelming sense of euphoria, lightness, and boundless energy.
That euphoria is the reward state of the system. Belief delivers this identity upgrade. You are no longer an energy vampire, you are a channel for universal love.
Which brings us to the feedback loops, specifically outlined in the seventh insight, conscious evolution. This is all about learning to follow your intuition, your dreams, your daydreams.
If you get a random thought to go down a certain street, you follow it. This creates an airtight institutional reinforcement cycle.
Let's map that loop because it's the core engine of why this works.
Okay, so belief in the system increases your attention to coincidences.
Right, and increased attention naturally produces more evidence of those coincidences.
Exactly. More evidence reinforces your belief and upgrades your identity.
You feel like you're vibrating higher.
And the seventh insight explicitly frames skepticism as a failure of that evolution. If you doubt the coincidences, your energy drops. You lose the connection. Skepticism becomes a sign of low development or disconnection.
It perfectly insulates the system from critique.
Mm.
If you question the logic, you're just stuck in a control drama. You aren't evolving.
It penalizes doubt and rewards pattern attribution. Now, once the individual system is set, the book scales it up to a societal level. That's the eighth and ninth insights.
The eighth insight is the interpersonal ethic. It's about how we treat others to accelerate this evolution. It introduces the idea of beaming energy to people by focusing on their beauty and truth.
But structurally, this is an evangelism mechanic. The text explains that when a group consciously shares energy, they form a group mind that can access higher truth. But more importantly, uplifting others, which means bringing them into this framework, gives you more energy in return.
Sharing the insights becomes both a moral duty and a recruitment pathway. You have to recruit others so you can vibrate higher yourself. Identity encourages evangelism, evangelism increases social confirmation, and social confirmation increases the perceived reality of the whole framework.
And where does it all lead? The ninth insight, the emerging culture. This is the grand utopian vision found at the actual Celestine ruins.
It predicts a massive economic and social shift. It talks about a move toward automation and voluntary simplicity, where humans don't have to do menial labor anymore.
But the fascinating part is the emergence of a truth economy. Dobson explains that in the future, people will literally pay each other for spiritual insights.
Money just becomes a mechanism to thank someone for an energy exchange.
Think about the ecosystem that validates. It validates the professional spiritual seeker. It validates the self-help publishing ecosystem. It says that producing compelling frameworks is the highest economic good.
And the ultimate goal of all this evolving and insight sharing isn't just a peaceful society. It's biological transmutation.
Right. The system promises that as humans raise their vibration, their atoms will literally vibrate at a higher frequency. We will become invisible to those vibrating at a lower level, and eventually we will just walk directly into heaven without having to die.
It is the ultimate explanatory closure. It conquers death not through religious salvation, but through energetic progression.
So we've mapped out how the machine works. Now we have to ask, why does the system persist? Why did it resonate so deeply? And why do structures like this continue to thrive?
We have to look at the antagonist again, Cardinal Sebastian. He represents the old institution. He demands external authority, scripture, dogma, the church hierarchy.
While the manuscript demands internal authority, your own direct experience, your intuitions, your coincidences.
The narrative inoculates the believer against institutional rejection. It taps into a deep, systemic institutional distrust.
Exactly. It connects to broader nested systems, the rise of new religious movements, the spiritual marketplace, the demand for direct experience alternatives when traditional authorities fail.
It takes psychology, quantum physics concepts, history, and mysticism, and it blends them all into this incredibly smooth, digestible framework.
It thrives in an attention economy because it explicitly tells you that what you pay attention to becomes your reality. It rewards compelling frameworks over testable claims. It's emotionally adaptive for uncertainty. It supplies meaning, community, moral coherence, and a portable diagnosis for conflict.
It converts subjective validation into durable certainty. Because it's narrative-driven, you experience it rather than just learning it.
Yeah. Which brings us to the analytical conclusion of our entire deep dive.
Right. So looking at all these mechanisms, the gamification, the energy extraction, the confirmation loops, what is the crisis in perception here?
The core crisis in perception is the fundamental confusion between explanatory comfort and structural truth.
Let's clarify that difference.
Explanatory comfort is when a system makes you feel better because it gives you a recognizable label for your anxiety. Diagnosing your boss as an intimidator stealing your energy feels incredibly validating. It resolves the tension.
But that doesn't make it a structural truth about how the universe actually operates.
Exactly. What is being obscured here is the incentive-driven layer of the meaning system itself. The system is mechanically designed to reward pattern attribution and to deeply moralize doubt.
It's an engine that manufactures its own evidence.
Yes. And this is why surface interpretations of a phenomenon like the Celestine Prophecy completely fail.
All right, because critics look at it and say, oh, it's just badly written fiction, it's harmless nonsense. And believers look at it and say, no, this is absolute spiritual truth, it's gospel.
Both sides are missing the systemic mechanics of belief formation. They miss that this is a sophisticated social protocol. When you apply a systems-level analysis, visibility completely changes.
It reveals how narratives don't just tell stories. They function as recruitment infrastructure. They function as behavioral regulation. They build identity.
Regardless of whether any of the metaphysical claims are real, whether we are actually going to vibrate into another dimension, the book functions as a masterclass blueprint for how interpretive systems spread.
They spread by turning uncertainty into meaning, and then turning that meaning into rigid social structure.
It is a perfect machine for its time, and the mechanics of that machine are still running in countless other frameworks today.
And that brings us to the end of our analysis. Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.